Hey everyone, Karen the Warped Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. I do have a machine again. The part arrived easy to replace and it is working again. So yay. And it is a rainy day, which is both good and bad because the people who are working on my patio, which is about a foot from me, can't work today because it's raining. But on the other hand, they can't work today because it's raining. And I have a definite deadline for them to get that finished so the fence can go in. Anyway, today I want to do something with kind of Drunkard's Path, but not really Drunkard's Path. Could do it with curves. We'll see how that goes. But the idea came from this book, Happy Trails by Pepper Corey, which I think is long since out of print, but it's wonderful. She's a lot of fun. My sister and I took a class from her around this particular book. And what I have always remembered from it, I love Drunkard's Path, but what I've always remembered from it is this quilt, which isn't really a Drunkard's Path. It's called Snake's Trail, and it's a puzzle quilt. You can see that the background blocks are pieced, and then there are trails running through it, so strips running through it. And it's a specific, just like with most blocks, it is a specific curve in a specific place. So you would do it with the template. And it's on two sides of a square. So here's a block, and then it has the two, get my crummy looking fingernails out of there. It has two corners that have these strips along them. And then they are arranged in this trail, which apparently have specific directions for how you do it. And it was passed from family to family and etc., etc. So it looks like these blocks were pieced together, and then there's this winding trail of like a bias strip or something, which you certainly could do. But I was wondering what it would look like if we did something like that, but in more of an improv sort of fashion. So that maybe I'll try it with straight strips. Maybe we'll try some gentle curves. I don't know. And with most things, you could use all kinds of backgrounds. You could use a solid color, same solid color, mix the colors, have black and white background, or have a bright background with black and white strips, or black strips or white strips, and lots of things we could contemplate. But because I still have lots of 2.5 inch squares, I think what I'm going to start with is a 9 patch. And then from the 9 patch, I will cut off some corners at sort of random angles and insert these strips, which are mostly straight lines and 2.5 inch, 1 inch wide. But we'll see. I probably want something wider. Don't know what I want to be wider. If I want them to be equal, if I want things spread out. I have a real mishmash of 2.5 inch squares. And the thing is, they wouldn't even have to be 9 patches. So I'm thinking you could, of course, piece them in any way you want, just kind of a crazy piecing crumb quilt sort of thing. Or I could also add another strip on top, another row on top, and then have an elongated one, which would make it more challenging to piece things, of course. But if I continue to do those 2 different sizes, it would give a different sort of effect. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to start out by doing this 9 patch, and then we'll come back and just cut some random pieces off the corners. Insert these and see how it goes. We have a bright funky 9 patch, and I'm going to take off the corners, not necessarily at any particular angle, and opposite corners. Oh, let me think about adjoining adjacent corners. No, definitely want to do opposite. Explore the other at some point, but for now we're going to just do this. Those aren't very funky corners, are they? Not very funky angles. I haven't got my funk on yet today, I guess. So now I'm going to insert some strips in there, and also while I'm gone I will do a couple more 9 patches, maybe a 12 patch, and see. So we've got a chance to see what they'll look like if we start putting them together. The 2 strips are inserted. You could see this one wasn't a straight cut. I'm happy with that. I purposely did that, actually. I think they could be a little wider. Things aren't going to match up anyway because it's a different angle, but I do think I might want some a little wider. I also made another 9 patch and a 12 patch. Because of these insertions, this is not square as it is. So we'll see if I need to square it up. It may be that I don't do that until I start, say, putting rows together. And then I start making them the same size or doing curves in them or whatever I'm going to do with it. And as I'm doing this, of course, I'm also thinking, boy, wouldn't a black and white stripe be good in there? But that's just me, and you know that. And black would be fine. All kinds of things would be just fine. You could do all different tints and shades of one color and then have another accent color running through it, or do white, black, or black and white stripe. All right, so I want to, the boys and girl are out. Well, I guess just one is out. I think it is Axel. All right, anyway. I will cut here, and I want it to be a funkier angle just because I want different angles going on here. So there's one, and then here is another. And I think I might cut some strips that are a little wider. These are all roughly 1 inch-ish. So I might cut some a little wider and do a narrower one and a wider one, because this one actually sort of has that effect. And they might not, you know, I think I may not want them straight. I kind of like this idea. So I will cut a couple of those, and then we'll come back and we'll cut and insert a couple of strips in there, and then we'll come back and do this. For some reason, just about all of my 2.5 inch squares of this fabric are not actually 2.5 inch squares, but these are going to be trimmed anyway. So I don't know. I think I put they're 2.5 in one direction, but 2 1/4 in another one. So obviously I messed up, but I think we can make up for it when we trim. So strips here, and I'm gonna maybe want to try something different on this one. All right, I wanted to show you how I'm squaring these up. All I'm doing actually is straightening the edges. So I'm lining up a perpendicular line on the ruler here with one of the original 9 patch seams, and then making it as wide as I can, realizing that I am at some point probably going to be trimming them to a different size, but at least visually they look better. So you might start putting them together like this. You could do this one where it's going up in one direction and will turn eventually. That's kind of the fun of the maze, and they aren't going to exactly match, obviously. And then you can start having it, say, turn a corner here and come back, or go more that direction. it will take quite a few to get there. What I'm thinking I want to do on this one though is try a curve, and it can be a slight curve, but I want to do a curved piece, and it's going to, we could end up with a pretty much smaller block here. I'm going to cut the curve for the light color, the strip, as well as this one at the same time. So I'm going to have to grab me some white fabric. I have swapped out the 12 patch, made another one because I made a boo-boo. On this one is much brighter, isn't it? I like it. I was wanting to do a curve, and so I cut a curve here and I cut a curve there. This was very, very gentle, as you can see. Cut a steeper curve here, and then I realized I wanted to go this way instead of this way. So this will be saved for another project, another time. Maybe it'll work itself into this. I don't know. But now I have to remember that I'm cutting it, nope, this way. Yes, this way. No, wait a minute. See, I'm this way and this way. See if I can get the swing right. Okay, now while I am cutting that, I am also going to cut the strip that's going to go underneath there. So the strip's going to be like this. I am curving it like this, and to make sure I've got everything I need. That is the wider section. Okay. And remember, Karen, it this way. It's that whole spatial thing. All right. This way. I'm putting this here to make sure I know I'm going in the opposite direction. There we go. It's bad, folks. It's really bad. So I want to come from probably out here somewhere. I want this to be a reasonably steep curve. Not so horrible that I can't easily do it, but not so wimpy that you can't see it. All right. So I could go ahead and cut this second curve, but I think instead I'm going to stitch this first, and then we'll come back and cut that one in the same fashion. I'm going to flip this over here, and I will be sewing it with needle down, 1/4 inch seam. This is never going to work out perfectly because, of course, we have not cut a seam allowance for it. I'm just trying to cut. All right. Take the glove off for one thing. And I should have marked this when I first cut it. See where it fits in here. And then I'm going to mark this as where the start is. Now, I'm going to do it with the convex on top, scant 1/4 inch seam, needle down, go slowly, and when I am doing my 1/4 inch seam, when I'm measuring it, whatever I'm using to measure it, it should measure a 1/4 inch where the needle is coming down, not the front of the presser foot or wherever my guide is, but where the needle is. That's why I had trouble with curves for a long time, I think, is my tendency is to look ahead to like the end of the presser foot, because the edge of the presser foot is my guide. I move the needle and then it is a 1/4 inch from the edge. So I have to remind myself to make sure I'm looking and measuring at the point where the needle's coming into the fabric. And that becomes more and more important the steeper your curve is. All right, now of course we could just trim this up and make it a corner so it's kind of an elongated drunkard's path, which would work, but we aren't doing that today. So now I want to cut a curve, and remembering that I still want a 1/4 inch seam in there. I'm allowing for it, but not really, because I'm not allowing for it here. So let's go with about there, maybe a little more. And this, of course, changes the size of the block, and oh well, that's improv for you. All right, so now I'm going to cut to match that curve, or I can recut the curve, make it different, as long as I cut it at the same time as this one. All right, and now to sew this one, this time this piece on top, and again, I'm just going slowly, needle down, just lifting this in position as I go, not stretching or tugging on it, because these are both bias. It's not a perfect curve. They aren't perfectly parallel, but that is actually planned. Had I wanted it to be perfect like that, I could have arranged for it, but would have involved a template, and you know, I'm not doing that today. So now we have a curve on one corner. Let's see how that's going to match up with these, because frankly, you know, I just can't resist. So it could start moving around like that. It could start heading up in that direction. Or I could just say, you know what? I like it better with curves, even if they aren't going to match up perfectly. We don't know. I could decide I want that one up there and this one going down this way. I need to press that baby again, don't I? So it will be an interesting maze. It's going to be different from what was in the book if we have these straight lines, or even if we have curved lines that are going off, that are not matched up. Could be kind of interesting. We'll see. Let's do a curve on this edge too. You know, I'm almost thinking, what if I made a bit of a curve out of this? It's going to change the size of the block, but then we know the blocks are going to be different sizes anyway. So I have this piece here still. It would be going this way, right? Or, oops. Or I could use this one, which is already cut incorrectly. We'll leave that one as is, and then I'll recut this one, but with the curve going the way I want it to. What a concept. I will need some more white fabric for that, but I think I will do that. And I'm not going to trim up here. I stopped trimming when I realized that I was going in the wrong direction. So I will leave that, because maybe that's extra room I'm going to need. I don't know. But I'm going to do another curve here, and then I'll need a curve down here as well. I really think the curved is going to be better. You could do the straight for sure, and it would be a different look, a more linear look, which might or might not work. I think you'd get lots of, yeah, which isn't really what I'm looking for. Maybe an occasional one would be all right, but mostly I think I want curves. So it said that I will get some more white and change this curve and this also. And then I will also curve here. Most of today's video is going to be me off camera making mistakes and sewing funny seams. So I'm somewhat fortunate in that this was a 12 patch and not a 9 patch, so if I lose some, it's not as much as it would have been with the 9. Well, it's the same amount, but it's proportionally different. All right, rather than have this cut really, really short when I change the curve on this, which would mean this would be a much smaller piece because so much of that would be taken up. So this is apparently going to be quite a blue block. I've cut this other piece, and now I can cut this curve first so that I will have, now what we're going to do first is cut this curve out of the white, which I already did, didn't I? We're going to stitch that on, and then we will cut the curve for that one. All right, and I am back to cut this strip, which let's do it thusly. All right, and now we're going to sew that there, and you can see that there's going to be a lot of trimming going on. It's the way the improv curves go. It's time to do some straightening up here. And that's going to be an interesting proposition. Usually is when you're doing improv. Just have to go for it. I'm liking this much better with curves. I guess maybe being a circle person means that I also want curves. That does not look the least bit straight, but part of that is because the seam isn't straight. So let me try that. That looks better. All right, now this one is a humdinger, isn't it? Going to be losing a lot on this one, which means it's also going to be an interesting shape later on when we're putting them together, but I've concluded that it's going to pretty much be that way anyway. And that will be part of the puzzle, putting the puzzle together. And we can see how it might affect the maze coming together. Here are our two curved pieces. Now, because of the height of them, they wouldn't come together quite like they do on the, what I'll call templated one that we saw in Pepper Corey's book. But I think that's going to be part of the fun of putting these all together when we get to that point. Some may have to be cut down, or we may have to just throw in some fillers. I don't know yet, but looks like it could be kind of fun. That could go off in that direction. And of course, we can always trim blocks at any point. An offset maze. I don't dislike that either. That's kind of an interesting look where it's the curves are not meeting up, because of course they're never going to meet up exactly. They're freehand curves of different widths, so they are never going to meet up exactly. So we may as well just make it clear that we knew they weren't going to, and we planned it that way. Don't know that I would want those two blues together there, but yeah, I think once we were to do more curves, that would be, might be kind of fun just to do very narrow strips. What are your thoughts on that? Let me know in the comments. We could, of course, just lop that off and have that curve. Seems like kind of a waste, but we could do that. And that isn't much of a curve then. Or we could do something with a strip here, or we could just keep adding blocks of different dimensions so that eventually they match up, as if you were doing a mishmash quilt. Or this one actually does match up pretty well if we do it from the bottom here. It looks like the St. Louis arch is leaning. So it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, only it's the leaning arch. Anyway, what I have learned from my explorations today is that I actually like the curve better than the straight. I thought the straight might just be kind of a modern improv-y version of it, but I think it would be too linear and angular for how I was seeing it in my head. And also to curve it this way instead of that way. I mean, you know, sometimes you learn the basic things, right? And overall I like it, and I think it will be a good way to use these 2.5-inch squares, which I still have a lot of. I don't know about you. And it would be something that you could just pull out and do some 9 patches or 12 patches or whatever, and then later sit down and do some curves or whatever. So it could be kind of a long-term ongoing project, which is probably what mine will be. But I really am liking these very brights with this white. Let me see if I've got Silly Woman. I do have black and white stripe here, which I will have to fold a bit in order to work, but that could be kind of fun too. And then have them all be black and white stripes. If I wanted to be really, really serious about the whole thing, yikes, I could do black and white stripe within the white. So then run a no. I'm not doing that. I have already decided that. Anyway, I think that will be it for this exploration for today. I did want to talk with you a little bit about bags. Thank you all for your comments and suggestions last week for other bags I could explore. I will put down in the links, in the discussion, I will put links to, I think it was 3, maybe 4 people who had suggestions of specific designers or companies or books or patterns, and I will link those below. Thank you all for that and for all your comments. There are some people who have made bags and some people who have just made up their own bags, which is amazing, and others who haven't made bags but are thinking maybe they'd like to. So it was fun to depart from the usual quilting, which of course I love, but so I thank you for that. Now, there was a suggestion that I do tutorials on bags, and I'm not opposed to doing that. I am by no means an expert on making bags, by the way, but it's something that I would want to teach my own design rather than somebody else's, just because even though this is free, it might deprive them of being able to have a class that people pay for. So It's not, I guess, precisely a copyright issue, but I would not feel comfortable doing a bag of someone else's design unless they specifically said I could do that. So I have designed a bag. Actually, it's called the Venue Bag. And it was the request of my quilt shop because this was pre-COVID, when lots of people were going to big concerts or sports events, and you have to have, well, in the US anyway, you have to have a bag under a specific size, and it has to be clear plastic, et cetera, et cetera. So I designed a bag for that purpose. But I would like your input on what features you would want in a bag. Do you like zippers? Lots of pockets, not so many pockets, pockets on the inside, pockets on... What are the must-haves for you to make a bag useful and successful for you? Let me know in the comments. I have some of my own. I'll try to sort of merge them all together, and we can call it the Franken bag. And we'll just make it ours, not mine, we'll make it ours. And then I can do a tutorial for that online, or maybe work my way through it. No, that would be awful. You wouldn't want to sit through that. Never mind. But let's design the Franken bag. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see in a bag, what you must have in a bag. And I'll start pulling those together and see what I can come up with for a bag. It will be interesting. I'm just not a bag designer, but I'll see what I can do. And you all may have suggestions as well. Some of you are making bags without patterns, so we may be calling on you for our Franken bag. That is it for this week. Next week, not sure. Don't know what's going to be happening with my patio and wall and backyard at that point. With any luck, it will be finished, but I'm not going to make any promises on that score. So whatever may arise next week, I hope you will join me for that. Thank you so much for being here with me today and for your comments and suggestions. I always appreciate those. If you have not subscribed and are liking what you see here, please subscribe and hit the like button. It helps other people to find this channel. So until next week, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out. Okay, Karen, but what about circles? Am I right? You know, I have to try to get circles in there somehow. Honestly, I don't think they're going to make it in this one, but I have to try.